first and major reason, the main reason of the Muslim downfall, it began when the Muslims shifted their emphasis from studying Quran as a book of law, L-A-W, law, as a book of law for my individual self and for the society. When I shifted this emphasis, shifting the emphasis, what does it mean? Shifting the emphasis means that there is a purpose for everything. I read an English textbook in my classroom so that I have to pass the exam when I write the exam. But I don't study physics in my classroom for the sake of only passing the exam. I want to study the nature around me. But English, languages, when I study, languages I merely do it so that I'll develop a little bit of communication. I can speak a bit of English. I do not want to become an author of English poems. I do not want to become an author of English dramas or prose. I learn English in my classroom only to the level that I can communicate with this subject. But physics, biology, social studies, the other subjects, I keep in mind that tomorrow when I grow up, from amongst these subjects, I need them in my life, because if I want to do a job, if I want to pursue further in my studies, if I want to progress in my career, I would need any of these subjects as expertise for my field. Similarly, when we Muslims started to shift this emphasis, what emphasis? The emphasis that Quran should not be studied merely, or rather forget the term studied, we only read Quran. We don't even recite Quran. We do it as if we are reading an English book or a Hindi book, because there is no tajweed in it, and without tajweed, the talaffuz is not there is no khiraat in it, so we just read it, and the reading is done traditionally. It's a custom. Why do we read it? Because if we read one alphabet, the Prophet said you will get 10 rewards. So my intention to read the Quran, the emphasis of reading the Quran for me and most of us today has become limited, or we have limited it only for the sake of sawab. And this shift of emphasis was the beginning of the Muslim downfall. This is the major most reason. When Nabi and Sahaba read the Quran, they read it as a book of law to implement the laws of Quran upon themselves individually and upon the society. This is 100% lacune, a shortcoming, a total demarcation between Nabi, Sahaba and the Muslims of the world today. The moment this shift began, the downfall began with that. As long as the people held to this book as the book of law, today we are 1.3 to 1.6 billion Muslims on the face of the earth. For cross-examining my claim, go back to your house, ask your parent, just one question, ask the parent, why do you read this Quran? I challenge you, 99%, I can even say 100%, if you meet 100 people and ask them, 100 of them I can tell you, will give you the answer, I read it because Allah will send me into Jannat. The emphasis that this Quran needs to be read as a book of law of Allah, to be implemented upon my individual self and upon the society, you will not come across this answer at all. Because that shift of mind, that shift of psychology, that shift of ideology, that shift of concept of studying Quran is totally gone now. The beginning of downfall began now. So now when you don't read Quran, this is the book which is fundamental most for every Muslim. And the moment you shift this emphasis from there, how will you know your creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? You don't know who is your creator properly, except that you know Allah as much as a Christian knows Jesus Christ or a God. There is a God. Ask a Christian, what do you mean by a God according to the Bible? No Christian can say that Jesus is the God. Why is he saying Jesus is the God? Because traditionally and by custom, in the church sermons, he was told by the one who he thinks is a knowledgeable person of the Bible that Jesus is the Son of God, Jesus is the Savior, Jesus is everything for you. So traditionally, he believes Jesus to be the God. Traditionally, he believes God as a person who is the originator of the universe. Meet a Hindu, ask him who is the God. A Hindu can never give a definition of God from the Vedas in general. A majority of the Hindus, if you meet 80% of the population of India which is supposed to be of Hindu community, meet them. Meet them and ask them who is God according to Hinduism. And you will find a variety of definitions coming for God. Because he has not studied God from the texts of Hinduism. Meet a Jew. Ask a Jew who is God. He would say Yahweh, Elohim. Who Traditionally, he heard the terms Elohim, Yahweh. He doesn't know who is Elohim. He doesn't know who is Yahweh. Meet any other religious personality believing in God. Meet any theist who believes in a God and ask him who is God, and the definitions come. Similarly, if a non-Muslim is supposed to meet you and me and ask who is Allah, the answer would be Allah is the only God. What do you mean by Allah is the only God? So the second major reason is because we shifted our emphasis from understanding Quran as a book of law on myself and for the society. The second major reason for our downfall is we are not introduced to the only one God by his names and attributes. So when I don't know the God by his names and attributes, my downfall begins. If I do not know my Father in the right perspective, then I have a problem, psychological problem, to understand how I shall behave with the Father, what is the responsibility of my Father towards me and my duties towards my Father. If I don't know the Creator Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I will never become obedient to his commands, because I take Allah traditionally the way the other religious people have taken their God. So the second major reason or main reason for Muslim downfall is not knowing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Creator, with his names and attributes. This is the second major most reason, because we don't study Quran the way the Nabi and Sahaba radiyallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in alayhi salatu wassalam studied the Quran. The shift of emphasis from studying Quran as a book of law to be implemented on my individual self and the society, this is the major most reason. Second, because I don't study the Quran, I just read, don't even recite it. I just read the Quran. So based on the reading of the Quran, I hardly know who my Creator is in the right perspective. If I say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is merciful, a Christian stands beside you to say even God is merciful. So how will you differentiate between the God he is talking about to be merciful and your Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being merciful? If you say Allah is most loving, the Hindu will say Bhagwan is also most loving. Now how will you discriminate between the love of Allah for you and Bhagwan loving others? So to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala most loving, you need to know who is Allah as Al-Wadud. To know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the most gracious, you need to know Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim. So when you don't know this, you don't know the Creator. I don't know the Creator. I am totally ignorant, 100% ignorant about the knowledge of the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the right perspective. So because I do not know Allah in the right perspective, it is very difficult for me to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Allah wanted me to obey Him.